You feel it the moment you walk into your own living room on a July afternoon. The thermostat says 76, but the wall behind your couch is warm to the touch. Your shoulder brushes the drywall near the window, and it feels like a heating pad someone forgot to unplug. That is not your imagination. Modern drywall and paint absorb heat and hold onto it. 200 years ago, the walls in most farmhouses did the opposite. They were coated in something almost nobody uses anymore, and it turns out that old coating solved a problem we are still trying to solve today with electricity. The material is lime. Specifically, lime plaster and lime wash, made by burning limestone into quicklime, slaking it with water, and letting it cure into a soft white paste that gets brushed or troweled onto walls. People have been doing this for thousands of years, in the Mediterranean, across Europe, and in early American homes, mostly because it was cheap and the ingredients were everywhere. Nobody was thinking about energy efficiency. They were thinking about what was available in the ground. But lime plaster does something that plain drywall and modern paint do not do well. It reflects a large share of the sunlight that hits it instead of absorbing it as heat. Researchers studying reflective coatings have tested hydrated lime specifically for this reason. In one study on lime-based coatings for pavement, a hydrated lime layer cut surface temperatures by close to 22 degrees Celsius compared to bare asphalt, which was a bigger drop than several commercial reflective paints tested alongside it in the same experiment. That is a controlled lab test on pavement, not a house wall, but it shows the same basic mechanism at work. A high lime content surface bounces back more of the sun's energy than it lets in. Here's the second thing lime does, and this one is less about the sun and more about the air inside your home. Lime plaster is what building scientists call hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from humid air and releases it back when the air dries out. Researchers who have measured this effect describe it as a genuine buffering behavior, not just a marketing claim. Studies on lime-based and lime hemp plasters have found they qualify as good hygric regulators under recognized testing standards, meaning they measurably smooth out swings in indoor humidity rather than letting a room swing from damp to bone dry. One study on hemp lime plasters found the moisture actually penetrates several centimeters into the material, so a wall with lime plaster of sufficient thickness is functioning almost like a passive humidity buffer for the room, quietly pulling moisture out of the air on a muggy day and giving some back when things dry out. That matters for comfort, but it also matters for something people care about for a very different reason: mold. Lime is highly alkaline when it is fresh, with a pH often above 12. Mold and many bacteria struggle to establish themselves on a surface that alkaline. This is not folklore. It is one of the reasons lime has a long documented history as a disinfecting agent in exactly the kind of environment where you would want that property most, a hospital. The clearest historical case of this is Florence Nightingale during the Crimean War in the 1850s. When Nightingale arrived at the British military hospital at Scutari, in what is now Istanbul, in late 1854, she found overcrowded wards, a hospital built over a blocked and contaminated sewer, and a death toll from disease that badly outpaced deaths from actual battle wounds. In early 1855, a sanitary commission was sent out from London to investigate. Their team cleared the blocked sewer, cleaned up the water supply, and lime-washed the walls of the hospital. Nightingale herself later described watching the death rate fall sharply after those changes were made, and historians studying the episode credit the sanitation work, including the lime washing, with playing a real role in that decline. Nightingale went on to become one of the most influential reformers in the history of public health. And this experience at Scutari was part of what convinced her that hygiene and sanitation were not minor details, but central to whether patients lived or died. That is a documented, verifiable piece of history, not a family anecdote. It is worth being honest, though, about where the evidence gets thinner. There is a popular claim floating around that a specific named farmhouse family kept a written ledger tracking lime plaster's effect on their home over a century, or that a government agency ran a formal side-by-side study comparing lime-plastered farmhouses to conventionally built ones. Searches for records like that do not turn up anything solid. That does not mean lime plaster does not work. It means those specific stories should be treated as folklore or plausible tradition, not as documented research, and a good rule with any building material is to separate the parts you can check from the parts that are just a good story. So what do we actually know, put together honestly? Lime-based coatings reflect a meaningful amount of solar heat, compared to darker, non-reflective surfaces with lab-tested reductions in the range of tens of degrees on surface temperature under direct sun. Lime plaster and lime wash absorb and release humidity in a way that measurably smooths out indoor moisture swings, particularly when applied at sufficient thickness. And lime's high alkalinity gives it a real, historically documented track record of discouraging microbial growth, serious enough that it was used as a public health intervention in one of the most famous hospital sanitation efforts of the 19th century. None of that means lime plaster is a magic fix for a hot house or a damp basement. Modern lime plasters and lime washes are more of a niche, specialty material now, mostly used in historic restoration and by builders working with natural or breathable wall systems, and it is not something you can simply paint over your existing drywall and expect insulation-grade results. But the underlying physics and chemistry are real. They were understood well before anyone had a word for energy efficiency. And there is something worth sitting with in the fact that people mixing burned limestone and water in the 1800s were solving problems that still show up on our utility bills and in our thermostats today.